so much, Hanan, for this. Vivian. Hi. My question to you is, in your opinion and experience, how can the Israeli peace camp involve more women in the diplomatic process?
I'm going to stand because I'm short and I need to see people. Sorry. So thank you, Yuval. To that question, how can the Israeli peace camp involve more women in the diplomatic process? I would just say this: halavai, there should only be a peace process, a diplomatic process. And I think that the question really needs to be how to expand the peace camp in order to bring upon a diplomatic process. And here what comes to mind is what Freud once said about the narcissism of small ideological differences. And I think that that is what's been plaguing the peace camp, the left wing, certainly in Israel. I don't have to go into any details. But it's something that we have to overcome if we're going to rebuild a movement of significance, which we almost have never had. So I want to share my personal story. I'm a kibbutznik for 49 years.
Which one?
I live on the border of the Gaza Strip in Kibbutz Be'eri for the last 33 years, which makes working for peace an existential an existential necessity for me, an imperative for me. It's not something theoretical, it's something very personal. 2014 was a pivotal year for me personally. I turned 65, so now you know my age. I retired from being the co-executive director of the Arab Jewish Center for Equality, Empowerment, and Cooperation, NISPED, the Neged Institute for Strategies of Peace and Development. I'm still involved, but I retired. I now do what I used to do without getting paid. And I became a grandmother for the first time. The joys of my life, of course. But at 65, I decided it was time to take stock. To take stock of what I had been doing as an adult peace activist for some 40 plus years. Did I have an impact? Did I have an impact? Did we have an impact? And the sad conclusion I came to is no. And therefore, doing more of the same thing was not an option. That in the few years I had left to be an activist, I had to choose a different path. In 2014, the summer, Protective Edge, that catastrophic war that lasted 50 days between Gaza and Israel, that left 73 Israelis dead, 2,500 Palestinians dead. It was some kind of straw breaking the camel's back for women all over the country who decided, and women not necessarily politically involved up until that point, and they decided, must speak, enough. We have to raise our voices and make a difference. Now that, several months after the war, women came together. We thought there would be a couple of hundred coming on the trains from all over the country to Sapir, where we were holding an annual conference, non-related. 1,000 women got on those trains, all over Israel, dressed in uniform. I pointed out the uniform of Women Wage Peace, so white shirts and turquoise scarves. 1,000 women got on those trains and came down to Sapir, marched from the train station to the college, and officially founded Women Wage Peace. Not an ideological movement. When I first heard that term, I said, but I am an ideologist. How can I belong to a pragmatic movement? But I think that that is one of the keys that is going to break through what we have done before, not successfully, and to perhaps succeed. It was created as a pragmatic movement. Jews and Arabs, religious and secular, right, center, left, and geographically spread across the country, including the territories. We didn't think it was possible. I personally, ideologically, had never stepped foot across the Green Line and realized that Hanan was right. If we don't take into account 700,000 Jewish settlers, we're not going to be able to move the needle at all. Again, I live on the border of the Gaza Strip. When there was, Gush Katif was dismantled and we gave back the land, there were only 8,000 Jews in Gush Katif. It still is a traumatic move that was made on the part of Israel. 700,000, they're not moving. In order to create this this pragmatic movement, we had to make tough decisions, okay? It's not easy to compromise on your ideology. First, I'm gonna list 6. The first we did was to decide to focus on only one issue, right? The issue was we were going to advocate for a political agreement to end the conflict with the involvement, active involvement of women in every stage of the negotiations, pre-negotiations, negotiations, and reconciliation. We adopted a strategy not to adopt any one particular political solution. Rather, we were pushing for the existential need to recognize the existential need to reach an agreement that will bring security to the people in all of our regions. We need to fight the paradigm that we have been taught since the founding of the state, that only war will bring peace, to a new paradigm, that only a political agreement will bring security to our region. 3, a need to change the language, which you both spoke about, to enable more women to join us. Now, this may be very controversial in this room. I also found it difficult, but I truly believe we need to stop talking about the occupation of a land if we want to reach more and more Israelis to our side. In other words, the occupation of a land is a red flag for many Jews who believe God gave us the land, so we can't be occupying it. But we are occupying a people. We are ruling over a people. There's a moral imperative to stop ruling over a people. So, she's saying I have to stop. Okay, I'll talk faster. So we talk about ending the conflict and not ending the occupation. For the only issues, we only issue political statements in language that women across the spectrum can agree on in order to keep all people in the tent. We, again, repeating what Hanan said, we disclaim that Zionism is the exclusive property of the right and of the religious, and that peace is the exclusive property of the left. It's much more complex than that. You can see people of all kinds in women wage peace. And finally, we adopt the definition of inclusive security, a framework that places social and economic concerns on equal footing with military and political issues. So by being a broad-based movement whose members are affiliated to many political parties, We gain the ear of politicians across the political spectrum, something that is not, the left is not capable of doing, okay? How much time do I have left?
Minus 2 minutes.
Minus 2 minutes? Okay. Okay. So I'll skip what I was going to say and just say this. What keeps me optimistic? The Irish Prime Minister at the time of the Good Friday agreements attended a conference of Women Wage Peace, and he said, if you had asked him that week that the Good Friday agreements were signed, whether there was any chance in the near future that it would be signed, he would have said, you've fallen on your heads. That's a direct translation from Hebrew. You're out of your minds. But they were signed. If it happened there, it could happen by us. And finally, I want to read you a message that Women Wage Peace received from our sister movement, Women of the Sun, the Palestinian women who have organized to work together with us, but them on the Palestinian side and us on our side. After our elections, we were devastated. November 1st, we were devastated. They sent us this following message. We were created for the sake of peace, and we will remain for the rest of our lives fighting for this message. We are strong women, and we will continue together until we succeed.
Lastly, Hila,